Shalom lekulam, and welcome to our weekly study on the Parsha, the Torah portion. The Torah portion for this week is Chukat. Chukat is found in the book of Bemidbar, that is the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers, chapter 19, verse 1 to chapter 22, verse 1. And there are some subjects that this Parsha teaches about, and one of the subject is the subject of the red heifer, the red cow. It gives us actually an idea of how this cow was supposed to be used in order to purify those people in the Bnei Israel, between the Bnei Israel that were impure ritually because of touching a dead body or something like that. Also, we have the subject of Miriam's death and how the well that used to follow the children of Israel throughout the desert dried up after her death, and how the Creator, how God told Moshe to basically talk to the rock so water can come out of the rock. However, we see that Moshe kind of like gets angry to the children of Israel because of their complaint and lack of faith, and instead of talking to the rock, he hits the rock twice. In this parsha also, we don't have only the death of Miriam, but we also have the death of Aaron. And also with that, what we see is with Miriam, the well dries up. With Aaron, the cloud of glory disappears. So the children of Israel don't see the cloud of glory, so they see themselves vulnerable, basically. Also because of the complaining and the talking against the Creator and all that, and after everything that God was actually making for the Bnei Israel in the desert for 40 years, they're complaining. They get them beaten by venomous snakes. And in this parsha, we see also the subject of the brass serpent that Moshe put upon a pole, and whoever gazed, to this serpent, they were healed. And at the end of the parsha, what we see is basically Moshe leading the people of Israel to a battle with the kings of Sihon and Og, and this happening before they get into the land of Israel. This is east of the Jordan. What we're gonna do in our study today, we're not gonna touch all these subjects. We're gonna touch the red heifer, Miriam's death, the Moshe striking the rock twice, and the death of Aharon. And because this parsha is somehow linked together with the next parsha, which is the parsha of Balak. And the parsha of Balak actually is a continuation of the wars of the children of Israel against these nations that are found in the land. And before we continue, we need to understand that the book of the Torah is not necessarily a history book. It took historical facts of that time, and they were written down with certain symbolism and certain, in some case, exaggeration meaning poetic language, and in order to give us and show us a different perspective of what was happening historically. The book of Torah is basically an instruction about life. And when we hear about these kings, we hear about these nations that the Bnei Israel were basically fighting against in order to attain the land of Israel. We need to understand that these nations, yes, they did existed, but we don't need to take it literally that this was actually a real war or something like that. Maybe it happened, maybe don't. We leave that to the archaeologists, right? What we need to understand is that these nations, what they represent is actually the side of Tuma, a side of holiness in the world, but most importantly within ourselves. So these nations exist inside ourselves. So they're part of our egoistic nature. The Bnei Israel is the part that is the altruistic nature within us, and how these two forces actually are contending in order to attain a higher level called Israel. And in Israel, what we see is that this battle, what they mean actually is raising the sparks that are hidden inside these uh, clifford that we call the nations that are in the land of Israel before the children of Israel took over the land. Okay, so let's start with Chukat, specifically with the Rehifer. I'm gonna touch this in a very, very brief manner. So we're not gonna spend a lot of time because we have a lot to cover in this parsha. Okay, so the Rehifer. This is how basically the parsha starts, and the Parsha Chukat starts saying, "Sod Chukat HaTorah," and with these three words, basically, he's telling that this is a statute of the Torah, and this is a statute of the Torah which Hashem has commanded, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and they shall take to you a perfectly red cow, which is without blemish, which a yoke has not been put on it." So, red cow. The important thing here is to remember the color red, Adom in Hebrew, and the color red represents pure Geburah, pure judgment. And when it says without blemish, basically what it's saying is the following. Without blemish means is that it's a cow that has no Tuma in it, even though it belongs to the side of Geburah, which is the side that is more vulnerable to Tuma, to the forces of cleanliness. This one should have no blemish, no open door for any of these forces to get in. And this cow was supposed not to have performed any work, meaning that this cow shouldn't have been used for the benefit of someone or something. This cow should have been held only for this type of I would say mission, which is to be a source of purity, or a source of to purify the children of Israel when they got impure due to a dead body. And what really, when we really look at what's the impurity of a dead body? The dead body, when you study Kabbalah, you understand that a dead body basically means a vessel where the light has actually departed from it. So it's a dark vessel. It's a klipot. So if a person gets impure with that type of dead body, spiritually speaking, the red cow, Geburah, basically what it comes is to purify. And when it has no blemish, it means that it's a higher Geburah. It's not the Geburah that is under some type of tuma or blemish, and that actually helps raise the sparks that are basically fallen or dead, in this case, in the underworlds of Kabbalah, which is the words of Tuma. The word para, which is the word for cow, equals 285, and it is actually 285 is the same number as the 5 final letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which are the Atiot Sofi. And these letters, they're called Mansepach. Mansepach is because of their names, And these letters, when you add them together, they add up to 280. However, because there are 5 letters, you add 1 for each of these letters, and that's 5 basically. So 280 plus 5 equals 285, which is the same number for para, which is cow. However, taking this 5, which is the 5 numbers that we're adding, 5 digits that we're adding for each of these letters, when you look and separate, the word para, it's like you're saying par and hay, which is cow of hay. So this cow of hay basically means, even though it means Geburah, also is telling us about Malchut. And what he's trying to tell us is that this is a way to purify the dead, the influence of death, if you want to say it this way. The influence of death within the Malchut, and in this case within us, spiritually within our own Malchut. So that's basically what it means. So I hope that brief introduction of what actually the cow really mean, which is purifying the influence of death, meaning the influence of these vessels that have lost their light. Basically, purify means elevating these vessels to a higher degree. In this case, hay implies the lower hay of the Yohevah, which means Malchut. So it's purifying Malchut, purifying it from this influence of death. Okay, and let's now go to Miriam's death. And there's a lot in this parsha that we need to cover. And Miriam's death. So this is actually in chapter 20. So Miriam, when she was alive, there was a well that used to follow the children of Israel wherever they moved. So they were basically nourished all the time with water. They didn't suffer thirst. But then when Miriam died, this well dried up. And after they dried up, the people of Israel then started complaining about Moshe because they were suffering from thirst. But why this well actually was important, why Miriam was basically the force behind this well. For that, we need to go and see what actually Moshe, Miriam, and Aharon symbolize, and we're going to spend some time studying this part between these 3 characters. And we all know that these are siblings. Moshe, Aharon are brothers. Miriam and Moshe's brother and sister. And this is something that we need to understand, that these, whenever we see the 3, especially in this case 2 males and a female, it will symbolize something within the tree of life, certain parsuf, like Serampin, Chesed, or Geburah with Malchut, or Serampin, Yesod, Malchut. We're going to touch base on this, and so you can understand how this works. So Miriam basically, her name has the word Maim with a resh, the Hebrew letter resh added into it. So you take the letter resh out, it's Maim, which is waters. So it's waters plus the letter resh. And the letter resh is there, according to the Kabbalists, because the letter Resh symbolizes or means ribui, which is abundance. So it's abundance of water. Once Miriam is dead, the abundance of water is not there anymore. And what you need to understand that even though Miriam will represent Mahut, the Nukva, waters are actually the representation of Chesed. So every time we see waters in the Torah, it represents Chesed. Okay? Now, Miriam represents the water. Miriam is the power behind this water that the children of Israel were enjoying as they were in the desert, right? From Moshe, the force of Moshe, what was bringing to the children of Israel was what is called manna. So the manna was because of the merits of Moshe. The water was because of the merits of Miriam. Now, for Aharon, their brother, it was a cloud of glory that used to follow the children of Israel throughout the desert. The Moshe and Aharon are from the male side of Kedusha. Miriam is from the female side of Kedusha. So Miriam basically represents the Nukva. And to understand this, Mahut is in the center of the tree of life. It's the central column. Even though it's a lower Sephirah, it's still in the center of the column of the tree of life. And when we look at Moshe, Moshe was drawn out from the water. That's what his name means. Moshe means drawn from the waters. So it means he was elevated above these waters, the waters of Mahut. So he represents kind of like a serampin in a sense. So water is Chesed, and what we're gonna see in the future is that Moshe uses a staff in order to hit a rock. And staff, if you've been following us in previous Parsha, staff is of the force or of the aspect of Geburah, which is justice. And I'm gonna read a little bit from the Zohar so we can have an idea of what actually Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam represent. And this is I'm using the Kabbalah Center's Zohar, which is really good. It has some of the Baal HaSulam's commentaries in it, in between the paragraphs. It omits some of it, but it's still really clear, for those who are studying Kabbalah. And this is gonna be on Parsha Chukat, and this is the paragraph 39. It says, there were 3 siblings, Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam, as it says, and I sent before you Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam. Miriam is the moon, which is Mahut. Moshe is the sun, which is Serampin. Aharon is the right arm, which is Chesed, and Hur is the left arm, which is Geburah. Some say that Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, was the left arm. At first Miriam died, and the moon departed, and the well disappeared. Afterwards, the right arm that always brings near the moon, which is Mahut, joyfully and with friendship broke. Therefore it is written, and Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aharon, took. This is Shemot 15:20. Surely she is Aharon's sister, for he is the arm that brings her near in unity and brotherhood with the body, which is Serampin. Okay? And in the same Parsha, it's gonna be on verse 67. He says, Rabbi Shimon say, why were these 3 holy elevated siblings not buried in a single area? And this is gonna tell you basically the secret behind their burial sites, but this is from a spiritual standpoint. What do they represent when they were basically buried in certain place in the land? And here it gives you, like north, south, names of mountains, just to make sure that you understand that these burial sites are basically like gates that are closed or open for kedusha, so closed for Tumah and open for kedusha. So it says, Rabbi Shimon said, why were these three holy elevated siblings not buried in a single area? And why were the limbs spread about, one here and one in another place? There are some who say that each one died at a location where Israel were destined to be in danger in the future, in order to defend Israel, so that they will be saved. However, the explanation is that each one died as appropriate. Miriam died in Kadesh and was in the location between north and south. Since Miriam was a chariot to Malchut, which is between the right and the left of Serampin, referred to as south and north, Aharon, who was a chariot for Chesed, died in Mount Hor and was to the right direction. Moshe, who died in the mountain of Avarim, was in the center and was appropriate for him, since Moshe was the carriage to the central column, that is Tifaret. This was where Moshe was pulled into the mountain where Aharon was, and he collected Miriam's burial ground to that mountain of Moshe's, which was held on both sides, from the right and from the left, since the central column combines the right and the left. Therefore, it is called the Mountains of Avarim, in order to commemorate the passage that exists between the two sides of the mountain that allow crossing. Ma'avarim in Hebrew, that passageway is attached to this side and to that side, meaning to the left and the left side. So basically what the Zohar is telling us that we need to understand when we see these three siblings is we have Miriam representing Malchut, and we have Aharon representing Chesed, which is the right side, and Moshe, who represents Serampin. And that's the reason why we have this symbolism of the water, the manna, and the cloud. So what we're gonna talk about is about the rock, the water, and the staff. So the Creator, the God, tells Moshe basically, because of the people being complaining about being thirsty, this is actually what the Creator says to Moshe: take the staff and gather the assembly. The assembly means in Hebrew is hakahal. You and Aaron your brother, and speak to the rock. He says, speak to the rock before their eyes, that it shall give its water. Then Moshe raised his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, and abundant water came forth. So the Creator says, speak to the rock, yet Moshe hits this rock twice. Why? Because he was angry that the people were complaining they didn't actually have faith on the Creator, that the Creator was going to provide them, as he has done for 40 years already. And something then happened, because of Moshe hitting the rock twice. Says, because you did not believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you will not bring this congregation to the land that I have given to them. They are the waters of strife, where the children of Israel contended with Hashem, and he was sanctified through them, meaning the Creator was sanctified through them, through the children of Israel and this strife. But what does this mean? So The secret here is the following. The rock, like I mentioned before, we don't use the Torah as a historical book, and if we read it literally, we might think it's a history book, but it's not. It's more a teaching, an instruction, and uses things that happen for real. If you look at some archaeologists, they have found that there were wells and springs on top of some mountains, and they're in the desert, Sinai desert I'm speaking. There were parts in which people were nomads, and they used to know where these places where water was flowing out of rocks. So it's using that symbolism of the life that these people were having in the desert, but adding some spiritual symbolism as well in it, to convey a message, a spiritual message. So water means chesed. So the people feel thirst, meaning they are lacking, they're lacking light from the Creator, the mercy from the Creator. And this was happened. The rock symbolizes the Shekhinah. Okay? The rock symbolizes the Shekhinah. And this is according to Zohar, volume 1, page 24a, where it says that the staff refers to the written Torah. So the rock is the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, in this case, also means the oral Torah. So the staff is the written Torah. Moshe uses the staff instead of talking to it, speaking to it, he hits it twice. By hitting it twice, he created what we call a ripple effect. The famous butterfly effect also takes place here, because by hitting it twice, in the future, what you're gonna see is that the oral Torah, instead of being oral, because of situations that happen in the history of the Bnei Israel in the future, there was a need to write it down. So far it's been written down twice. Twice in the sense that because the ancient sages, rabbis, thought that probably people will forget about these teachings because they are in exile, or they were in exile. They found the need to write these things down. The first writing that we have about the oral Torah, and big writing, I would say, is the Mishnah. So that's the first hitting on that rock. So hitting on the oral Torah, that's the first strike. The second strike is considered the Talmud. So the second writing of the Torah is the Talmud, with an expansion of what was written in the Mishnah. And in this time, even though the Mishnah, it says that when he hit the first time, a little bit of water came out, but when he hit the second time, a lot of water came out. So the Talmud, if you really look at it, is the Mishnah, the little water, but now expanding, giving more water. And from the Talmud, we have a lot of Kabbalistic teachings inside the Talmud, a lot of explanations. But this also brought something to the table that it is also mentioned in the Torah, and it says that these were called the waters of strife. So what we're gonna see, and when you read the Talmud, you're gonna see this a lot, the arguments between the rabbis and the sages about certain aspects of the Torah, agreeing, disagreeing, and all that. And basically there was a contention between them, what was right, what was wrong, how was supposed to be done, how wasn't supposed to be done, what is the right way of lighting a Hanukkah. You start from the left, you start from the right, or you start from the middle, things like that. You find that sometimes in the Talmud, you find things that are kind of confusing. They're talking about certain things, all of a sudden they jump into another subject. But according to Rabbi Jacob Haseira, he said this statement is telling us, do not think there is something improper with the disputes among the sages of the Mishnah and of the Talmud, which their differences in opinion regarding what is permitted or forbidden, what is pure or impure, or who is innocent or guilty, for this has already been discussed in the writings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, especially in Sohar Tikkun Sohar Chadash, page 166a, that their disagreements are comparable to people who all intend to make the bride look the most beautiful, except they disagree as to which jewelry is more appropriate to accomplish this goal. So basically that's how we need to see these waters of strife, is that it's all of them trying to make the best for the Creator. It was basically lishma, for the sake of the Creator. That's why a lot of people say that between the house of Gamaliel and the house of Shammai there were these disputes, but at the end both of them were right in their own way of seeing things, but we needed to choose a side, so usually they use Gamaliel. So that's covers Miriam's well. Now let's talk about the death of Aharon. And Aharon, as we mentioned, there was a cloud of glory over the children of Israel, and it was because of the merits of Aharon. When Aharon dies, this cloud basically disappears. And what this cloud represents is the external or makif that serve to distance the Tumah from Kedusha, the Tumah forces of impurity from the forces of purity. This is why when Aharon dies, King Arad attacked and took a captive from the children of Israel. Because when this cloud disappears, this or makif, then is not a division between these two forces, then the forces of Tumah can attack and do some damage, if you will, into the side of Kedusha. And what we're going to see is that the children of Israel made an oath in order to rectify this situation, and is that they asked the Creator that if the Creator gives these nations to the children of Israel's hands, that the children of Israel can take over their cities and possessions, that they will consecrate the spoils to Hashem. So what we need to see here is the following, is the children of Israel making an oath that we will do some corrections within ourselves. So this is how you have to look at it as well for you personally. You have the forces of Tumah. This king is taking a captive, basically is taking some of your good side captive, and you need to basically rescue not only this spark that was taken out of you by the side of Tumah, but also you need to make an oath, and is that if I'm gonna correct this, and to make sure that I make that restriction in which the Tumah and Kedusha are not mixed, that the Kedusha stays outside, and I continue being a righteous person, a good person. But whatever I do is going to be for the name of the Creator. Meaning that everything that the Creator do to help you in order to achieve this goal, the result is going to be only for His sake, not for your sake. So even though the children of Israel were doing this battle against this king, whenever they went over there and took the spoils and their cities and everything, that was consecrated to Hashem, meaning it was elevated to a higher degree because of the correction that was made. So even though in the Torah we read like it is a war and people are dying and everything, we can take it literally if we read it literally, but we can take it also as a war within ourselves, a war within inside our ego, this battle between the sides of good and evil in ourselves, and the goal that we have to basically elevate whatever we do, elevate it from lo lishma, which is not for his sake, but for my own sake, egoistic sake, or do it for lishma, for his sake, uh, basically to, some people religiously would say, to glorify him, and in this case I would say for his sake, in order for to transform or this desire from an egoistic one to an altruistic one. In this way we can be similar to the Creator's will. Okay, so in the next parsha, which is Balak, we're gonna touch a little bit about, especially about this contention between two forces, and these two forces are uh, kind of similar, but one belongs to Tuma and the other one belongs to Kedusha. So what we see here, when Aharon's cloud, or the cloud of glory, disappears because of Aharon's death, the forces of Tuma now have power to battle against the forces of Kedusha. And in the next Parsha, Balak, we're going to see how this game actually is played between Balak, Moshe, and Bilam. And it's going to be a very interesting Parsha. There's a lot of stuff in the Parsha we're going to cover, but we're going to pay more attention to the story of Balak, Bilam and Balak, and how they try to curse the children of Israel, and what does that mean, and what is the meaning of their names, and what did they accomplish, which they accomplished nothing other than blessing Israel, a blessing that we still say in our synagogues today. So I'll see you on the next Parsha. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you are seeing me before Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you next time.